No, first I gotta, you know how I do? I sketch things out,
That's what we're doing. We're
and then
sketching
no,
things
no,
out.
I gotta sketch it myself, and then as I go back and remember this stuff. Anyway, let me tell you, the companies here, a lot of the work you didn't need to do nothing more than sign your name to a paycheck. You could do the work, but you had to learn how to do it. It was a skill, but some of it was hard work. But listen, then the government got involved, and the next thing they started pushing this education real heavy. And the companies all started requiring a high school diploma before they'd hire you. And the jobs they was hiring you for had nothing to do with school education. You know, education you get in school, reading and writing and stuff like that. Only the jobs it did require with a seventh grade education was fine. That's all was needed. Anyway, so they started hiring. Stop hiring the labor guys, the guys that would really do the work. They started hiring students that was going to college. They graduated from high school and they'd work in these plants and go to college. Well, they cared nothing about, when they was in there working, their minds wasn't even there at all. They'd sabotage machines, jobs to get downtime. And the union, if a machine broke down, the union wouldn't let them pull the crew off to go on somewhere else. They had to sit and wait till it was repaired to go back together. Now, some cases, some companies would pull them off and at the crew and put them on another job. I've seen sabotage machines that cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars to repair. Sabotage by the workers who wanted to sit around, didn't want to work. I've seen it time after time. I was a pipe fitter. Now wait a minute. We're not going to go with this story like this because I have to go back from the beginning of it. And as I remember it, I got to come forward up to a certain period of time. See, I got to write it down. So one thing ties in with the other. And then you can go it through. Okay. At this time, Detroit was a booming city, no vacant houses, no busted windows, no litter on the streets. Everybody kept their lawns mowed. Everything was great. They painted their houses, took care of them. And there was no such thing as bridge cards or that kind of stuff. They did have some welfare, but not much. But you really had to qualify for it to get on it. And criminals was punished. When they went to prison. Detroit had a prison out past at North Line out there. And what it was a huge farm, work farm. When people did things, they stayed in the jail here for a short time. They'd send them to Tehoka, and they work 10, 12 hours a day. And when they got out of prison, well, when they got to serve their time, they didn't want to go back. No weightlifting, no TVs in the cells, none of that stuff.
Did you go into a prison to know?
Did I what?
Did you go into a prison to know that they didn't have weightlifting or anything?
Well, it was on TV, and I didn't go into the prison, but some people did. Back then, they didn't, the government got involved, and they're the ones that brought in the TVs and the computers and all that crap into the prisons. Before that, prison was prison. It was a place of punishment for the crime you did. It was designed to make people not want to go back there again. But anyway, let me go back to Detroit itself. Detroit was as far as I know, they had no financial problems whatsoever. They was well set. And then, but the population was changing. A lot of blacks was moving in, and the black areas, crime rate wasn't very high because they punished them when they did things. And you could go into a black area, and you didn't have to worry. You could walk in, walk through, nobody bother you. Black people could go into white areas, nobody bothered them. Women would take their small kids and go downtown in places now that you wouldn't want to go with a machine gun in your hand. Women with, like Mary, her mother used to take her and her brother downtown Michigan Avenue. They lived down on 17th Street in Michigan. They'd walk to the boulevard, they'd ride a bus. Her mother didn't drive. Now that's not going to particularly be in the book, but I'm giving you a layout of basically how things was. And then crime, the civil rights thing went into effect, and they started pushing that heavy. And all of a sudden, the blacks started to burn their own houses and loot and do stuff like that. And Detroit formed what they call a stress squad, a police unit. And this had blacks and whites in it. And what this stress squad was areas where the high crime people was getting robbed and beat up and different things. They would dress these cops up like the victims was. And they'd go into these areas, decoys like you might call them. And when the crooks attacked them, they got executed on the spot. In other words, if someone come up to rob them, well, he's a policeman they was robbing, saying they thought they was robbing an old person or somebody helpless. Instead, they was robbing, much like a movie like Charles Bronson had, you know, that one about New York, on that order. And they started complaining. Too many blacks are getting killed, too many blacks. Well, the blacks was the ones that was committing the crime. They was the ones that was doing it. Naturally, they'd be the ones that get killed. Coleman Young, first black mayor, he ran for mayor. He promised the black community, first thing he'd do is dissolve that stress squad. And when he got elected, that's the first thing he did. Fired all them guys. We had one of them, a black one, that come to Revere, got a job there. And the day they dissolved that stress squad, got these undercover cops off of the streets, they also had a big Buick, and they call it the Big Four. They had 4 big policemen with nightsticks. And they had one chauffeur. There's all 5 cops. Well, when they got called, they'd have trouble at a bar somewhere. A lot of times it'd be hillbillies in there fighting. When they got a call, they'd send the Big Four out, that Buick. And when they rolled up, they had these nightsticks like this. They'd wade into that, and they told anybody got near them to attack them or anything, they cracked their head right there. They knocked them out. Everybody was scared to death of them, even the tough guys, because they didn't go in reading rights and stuff like that. They went in and told them to scatter and grab the guys that was fighting, called the wagon, and they come out and threw them in jail, and they was not on the street the next day. They got punished for their crime. Whatever they busted up, they paid for it. It was all a different world. Anyway, when Coleman Young come in, he first thing he did was dismantle that, and he started all kinds of crooked crap. And next thing, the people started leaving the city because of crime. They started going to the suburbs, get away from the crime. And the next thing happened, lumber companies. Detroit used to have a lot of lumber companies, a lot of hardwares. The next thing happened is people stopped fixing up their houses. They stopped painting. They wanted to get out. They was someplace they wanted to get out where there was law and order. The lumber companies started closing down, and the next thing, the hardware stores started closing up because they didn't have customers. And houses started getting, vandalism started going like wildfire. People breaking into houses, stealing stuff, robbing people. And it just kept getting worse and worse all the time. When this mayor would come, he was crooked as could be. He was like a gangster almost. But he never got blamed for it. They thought he was the greatest. Thought he was the greatest mayor ever. And he did absolutely nothing but run the city in the ground. Next thing started happening, the small factories started closing up and leaving the Detroit area. And then the big factories started leaving. We had Tipton, actually, we had big factories all over Detroit. Detroit was one big industrialized area. And things just kept going downhill. And it never stopped going downhill. When Colby Young, he would have still got reelected after all the damage and destroyed everything. He never got blamed for anything. And he had all of his thugs in there. They was robbing the city. They was robbing the city blind. But it was black people doing it, and you don't bother with that. You don't talk about it. They had 3 newspapers. They had the Detroit News, which was big. They had the Free Press, and they had the Detroit Times. All big newspapers. On the stands, they delivered to your house. They had bus transportation anywhere you wanted to go, in the city on the main streets. Bus transportation, they'd come along. Some would come along every 15 minutes, and on the main streets, you would have to wait no longer than 30 minutes. And bus fare was, I forget now what it was, something like 20 cents, quarter, something like that. And you could get transfers. If you had to catch another bus somewhere else, you get a transfer. It didn't cost you no extra money. So. It was a whole different world. But what is my mind's going back now. See, I'm just kind of giving you an overall picture of it. But I can go into details more so, if I take my time, when I can think by myself. And and then at this time, say, they used to, like these, say a plant like Repair Pipe and Brass, their workers there, they run it on a profitable basis. They made good money, but they paid their help too. Paid insurance and everything on. But anyway, their management, they wouldn't bring a president of the company in off from somewhere else and bring him in there and turn him loose because he had all these diplomas and stuff and expect him to run the place. They promoted their people from within. People that would start out running machines and work their way up, and they knew the place like the palm of their hand. And these college, would-be college students come in there. They couldn't get away with nothing as long as these older people was there because they was wise to all that. And the union forced everything by seniority, forced the company to put people on jobs that was not qualified to run, machines and stuff, was not qualified to do it because of their seniority. So the unions played the unions and the government together. The government supplied the tools for the union to work with, and the unions did the destroying. For instance, I'll give you an example. I was a pipe fitter. I was on midnight shift by myself because I didn't, what I did, I just made repairs, minor repairs, you might say. And they had a lot of, say if they changed from one ore to the other, they'd have to change the rolls and different things, the dies and stuff. And what I did a whole lot of when I was on midnights, if they had to change a roll and had a hydraulic line or oil line run to it, pipe run to it, I disconnected that, even though it might take me 2 minutes to do it. And the maintenance guys that did that out in the machine shop, they called it. I worked out of the pipe shop, and the machine shop was a different department. These guys would come and change it, but they couldn't touch hydraulic pump, and everything had hydraulic pumps. Any kind of a pipe, they couldn't touch it. If I was tied up on another job and it took me, if it would take me 30 minutes or an hour to get there, so a lot of times it take me an hour to get there because I was tied up on something, that whole crew was shut down doing nothing. And even though any one of these maintenance guys could have done it in seconds, they couldn't do it. Had to be pipe fitter to do it. And when a lot of times I'd get called to a job and a pipe would bust, oil leak or something, and say it needed a new pump. We had the new pumps in storage. All you had to do is 4 bolts to hold the pump down there. I disconnect the lines to it, see, which would take just a matter of minutes. I could not take these 4 bolts loose. That machine shop work. I'd have to wait, sometimes I'd have to wait 3 or 4 hours for them to get there to take those 4 bolts out. And then when I put the old pump down, they had to put the 4 bolts back in, see. Everything was classified. Even though I could have done a whole thing myself. And can you imagine all this waste of time? And all these people getting paid all this time that's going on. Now this is almost unbelievable. But people who work down, they know it's a fact. Some people would come in, and the union was so strong, they'd come in, and if their machine was down, they might stay another whole 8 hours, not do a thing. Not do a thing. Where good management and everything would have had another job. They take these, they move them to another job, see, while they're repairing this job. In some cases, the union would not allow that. Oh, I've seen so much sabotage go on, it's just pitiful. And then the companies started moving overseas. They could get the work done with all that waste. They didn't have to worry about no unions. Anytime you put a person overqualified for the job he's doing, if he's really overqualified, he's bored with that job, say. And he's not going to do good work because he's bored with it. And if you hire a person because he's got degrees, hire him to work to do a job that he's overqualified for, all he's going to do is put in his time. And he's going to spend every minute he can preparing himself for whatever he wants to go to, see. Whatever field he wants to go to, he'll be studying. They'd bring their books in, they'd go to the washroom, and they'd study. and some of them would even sleep. And here's what happened when I first come to Detroit. They got worse and worse after I got here. But anyway, these places like Revere, for all these machines, they had a regular time study man with a stopwatch. He had a pad, and he'd go say to this machine, this slitter, say the slitter had 5 people on it. Operator, blocker that blocked the end of the strips, and then the guy on the other side that would tie it up, and put bands around it, prepare it for shipping. And then they'd have it inspected there, who would engage the metal, make sure it's the same thickness what they wanted, make sure it didn't have stains on it, make sure it was, it meet the thing. This time study man would stand there with his stopwatch. He would time study how long it took to block for the guy to block it, how long it took the operator to roll the coil into the position and start it through the machine, and then the blocker on the other side to put the ends into the reel, it's going to roll it up, how much time it took him to do that. And then everybody would wait till the coil runs, say, unless maybe the guy tied up, he'd have to go get bands and stuff, he'd be run low. And of course he had to keep bringing supplies, and other people bring it to him. And then he'd time how long it took to run that bar, or they call it a bar, it was really a coil. How long it took. Every little thing was time studied, and they knew how much time it take to run each order. They knew everything. And they'd pay a bonus, like they had like a bonus light on this machine, and when the machine was actually running itself, this bonus light would come on. And if you run the production, they give you a little extra money. You got to pay for the hour, but you get an extra bonus at the end of the week. It'd be, some cases it might be $10 or $12. If you got $20 bonus for a week, that was fantastic. But everybody had to do their job, and they had to do it like the time study man had set it up, say. Well, the next thing, the union eliminates that. Eliminates the time study man. See, these big companies like General Motors, they still have the time study man on the lines. They know how long it takes to do each little thing. And then you got the county and the cities. They didn't have too many unions. Small cities didn't have no unions. The counties, union wasn't very strong, and they also had time study. The union did away with that. And as time went on, like the county now, if you ever watch them, you'll see 5 or 6 trucks, and you'll see 15 or 20 workers, and you might see one guy with a shovel doing some little something. Everybody's getting paid by the hour, and the benefits and everything they get, by the time their pensions and everything, it's costing a good $40 to $50 an hour for each person they got there. And they may be doing nothing but filling a little pothole or something. They do a half-assed job on that. You go down south, Georgia and everything, when they patch the road, fill in potholes, when you come along, that's nice and smooth. They do a good job. They don't go with that nonsense down there, see. But anyway, all this stuff, I'm not making up any of this, and the people who work know about it. They know how it was. Unions destroyed. They was great in the old days. In the old days before the union, then the people was like slaves. So if the union come in, organized, they had a heck of a time doing it, and they was great for a period of time, but they didn't do any of this crazy stuff like I'm just telling you about. A fair day's work for a fair day's pay, what they do. And then the unions got political, got totally out of control, and what they did is started closing up plants. And at Revere, for 3 or 4 years before they finally closed down. They would have, they had a shipping department where everything went to the shipping, you know, and it was shipped out of there. They'd have tons and tons of finished metal go out, and then they'd have a truck bringing 100 tons of finished metal back in, because wherever it went to, Western Electric, wherever it went to, they found something wrong with it. One coil, all they had to do was find something wrong with one coil, they'd ship the whole load back, and the company had to redo it, remelt it, to go all through that process all over again.